first, and then I have some testimony to share as well.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that's fine. Yeah, Alexis, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the record.
Mhm. Thank you, Chair Durfee of the committee. Really appreciate you having me here on short notice. So just to introduce myself for the record, my name is Alexis Yamashita. I'm a resident of Essex Junction, Vermont. Just to do a brief introduction about myself, I am a local seed grower here that has been working with seeds since 2017. Specifically, my work is around heirloom, open pollinated, and organic varieties of seed. Along with my experience as a seed grower, I do have management experience in two different seed companies. I am also a member of the Organic Seed Alliance and a new board member of the Northeast Organic Farmers Association of Vermont.
All right. What would you like to share with us today?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I also just wanted to mention, I had sent an email early this morning to the committee, and what I wanted to share is in scanning the proposed changes in S.323 with the seed policy, and also reading the letter submitted by the American Seed Trade Association. In my personal feelings, I think it raises some significant questions about the possible impacts of the recommendations, not only in ASTA's letter, but some of the proposed changes in S.323. For what I specifically wanted to flag is around the changes of the inclusion around language around non-commercial sharing. So I think to highlight two examples, looking at the main, the changes proposed to changing the definition of distribute and distributor to including non-commercial activities. And also the section about it's subsection A that reads this section, and to facilitate uniform seed requirements, the secretary may apply any other term or definition that the the Association of American Seed Control Officials adopted in its recommended uniform state seed law as amended. It's page 16, line 5. So reading these things, again, I think it raises significant question. And what I wanted to ask today is if the committee would be willing to consider striking the language of the changes from the S.323 policy to allow for more time and consideration on how the language changes in policy, especially around non-commercial seeds, and really to get community members involved that are involved in local seed work to have diversified feedback on how these changes might impact Vermont seed. So really, again, what I'm advocating for is to have more time to deeply consider the proposed changes, and really, if it's helpful to explain why I have a lot of questions around how non-commercial sharing is being defined in the current proposed policy changes. It's really questioning, how this could have unintended consequences on supporting seed biodiversity and the strength of our local ag systems, and really equitable access to seed. Because I know we all want, to ensure that we have a supportive policy landscape that does support different ways to access seeds. Also, with looking at the non-commercial seed changes to that language, also wanting to make sure that there is space to really support, community-based seed saving and stewardship of traditional seed varieties by the communities that, those seeds are part of. So to kind of, bring this all together, in reading some of the proposed changes in S.323, it looks, from my understanding, including in the definition of distributing non-commercial, pathways, it looks like there could be implications as far as like additional regulations that may be imposed on non-commercial seed activities. So again, really my ask of the committee today is, again, to strike the language changes for now so we can have more of a community process to seek diversified feedback, or to ensure we're seeking diversified feedback from everybody that really is engaged in our local seed systems, and that do support support our local access to seeds.
Alexis, I want to try and clarify something, because you referred to some written testimony that we received from the Seed Trade Association.
Yes.
Suggesting some changes. We haven't considered and are not at this point. We're not intending to consider those changes. So, but I'm not sure whether the concerns that you're raising today are about that language or about the language in the S323.
Yes, thank you.
Possibly both. So if you could just make that clear.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is both. So reading ASTA's letter, again, there were things in there that raised questions about like how this, would actually unfold. And I understand and I appreciate the clarification that there are things in the letter that are different than the policy. My also concerns are with S.323 and seeing some of the language changes and policy changes that are advocated in the policy too. So again, for example, the looking at including non-commercial seed activities in the definition of distribute and distributor being one of them, and also again that subsection A with the secretary may apply terms, from the the Association of American Seed Control Officials. So just to clarify, Chair, it is concerns for both or questions from both the ASTA letter and also what is being listed as proposed policy changes in S.323.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So I would say for the purposes of our conversation, let's leave out the ASTA letter.
Okay, that sounds good.
We're not confusing things. We're not looking at that letter or that language. Can you just say again what, and I don't know if you have the bill handy or not, but if you do, if you could just point to the page and or pages and then the lines where your concerns are.
Yes. So I can flag two of my concerns and just in a more concise manner. And I apologize that it's a little bit repetitive. But the first one is page 15, line 19. And that's the definition of distribute and distributor. And seeing that the proposed new definition wants to include non-commercial activities such as bartering.
Okay, so we're on page 15.
I think it's okay.
Is that what you said? I think
it might be page 19. I just opened the bill.
Can I chime in?
Hi, yes.
To help clarify, for the record, Maddie Kempner, NOFA, Vermont. In the unofficial version as passed by the Senate, it is page 15, line 19.
Thank you.
So this is subsection 12, distributor means.
And also line 15, distribute as well.
Okay. And distribute means, okay, so the line 15, distribute means to import, manufacture, produce, mix, blend, etc. I don't see anything there about trading or non-commercial.
I think, Maddie, you might have it up on the screen, quicker. I'm trying to find it in the updated
Yeah.
version, but I believe it says bartering.
It does say the language that I'm looking at least here, Durfee, says
Oh, barter. Okay, yes, yeah.
Mhm.
sale, sell, barter, or supply seed for the purpose of sowing in the state through any means,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is quite broad.
Okay, so that definition is a concern, and then
Yes.
distributor, any person who distributes, there's a concern there as well.
Yes, and I echo what Maddie mentioned, is looking at how broad the language is.
Okay.
And if
Representative
it's
O'Brien.
helpful, I can just elaborate on that a little bit to
Mhm.
say that we're concerned that the definition of distribute being so broad as to include non-commercial uses extends then to distributors who are required to comply with certain labeling requirements that start within it's section 11. So that's page 17, starting at line 2. The labeling requirements appear to extend in that case to some non-commercial distributors. So that's a concern. We would be concerned if the registration requirements extended to distributors of non-commercial seed, but it does not appear that that's the case. And maybe Bradley can make sure to clarify that. But the registration and reporting requirements appear to have an exemption written in for non-commercial purposes, but the labeling requirements do not that I could see. So that is kind of concern number one.
Okay,
Yeah,
so could that be addressed by well, what is your recommendation or your specific request then for dealing with this?
Alexis, do you want to speak to that? Do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak, give some thoughts, and Maddie, if you want to chime in too. Yeah, so my specific ask is again to not vote on this right now, and if that means striking the proposed changes, so that so that the state can have some additional feedback from stakeholders on their thoughts about the policy implementation and any potential consequences.
So short of not voting on it, let me ask whether there's specific language that you would like strike this word,
Okay.
remove the word barter from that definition, for example, of what distribute means. If we remove the word barter, would that be sufficient to address the immediate concern?
I would recommend striking the word barter, but also clarifying that because the next clause in that sentence, supply seed for the purpose, also could be, I think, interpreted to include non-commercial uses. So I think it would be important to not only strike barter, but also clarify that distribute means to, I don't know exactly how you would word it, but that it means, only things that would fall under the category of commercial distribution.
Okay, so that's really what the interest is here, that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Maddie, was there more that you wanted to?
There's
add?
more that I want to say, which is also something Alexis already shared that I was
Yep.
going to reiterate, which is I think we really want to recommend striking the language that is, let's see. So it is in the same section further down. So section 9, subsection B, and that's on page 16, line 5, says, in addition to the terms defined in subsection A of this section and to facilitate uniform seed requirements, the secretary may apply any other term or definition that the Association of American Seed Control Officials adopted in its recommended uniform state seed law. That provision, in our view, really opens a significant backdoor way for the secretary to adopt other seed laws without having to consult with the legislature or the broader seed community. And there are definitions in that document that's mentioned here, the recommended uniform state seed law, that we are concerned would place undue burdens on, similarly, on non-commercial sharing of seed in an effort to protect intellectual property rights. So we want to recommend as NOFA that we strike that you strike that section entirely.
Okay, thank you, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Maddie, what were you referring to, intellectual property?
Intellectual property rights.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of the language that that we're concerned about in the ASTA letter and also in this recommended uniform state seed law document is, in our view, aimed at protecting the intellectual property rights of seed producers and seed companies, sometimes at the detriment of non-commercial seed saving and sharing. And so some of the language, and it can also just extend really inappropriate requirements to folks that are looking to non-commercially share and save seed, like labeling requirements, for example, that should really only apply to commercial sales.
So if a farmer in Montana is breeding a new strain of fescue to be distributed commercially, and he puts years of work in it and has multiple failures, and he finally gets a strain to hold that works, that propagates and creates a good seed, you don't think we ought to protect his right like a patent for so many years, so he can regain his cost? Is that what we're worried about? Because seed breeding, as you know, takes a lot of trial and failures and effort to get it right.
Yeah.
And a lot of money.
Understood, Representative Nelson, for sure. And I'm not saying that we're opposed to protecting intellectual property rights or commercial rights around seed as a whole. We just don't want to be putting language in that protects those and ends up in an unintended way restricting people's ability to save and share seed amongst each other in a non-commercial way. And I think I would love to hear Alexis's response to your question as a seed grower herself.
Yes, thank you, Maddie. And I echo what Maddie, says is definitely we do want to be careful to protect, the rights to work that, goes into variety improvement. And really, one thing I want to reiterate is, the main concern is with the inclusion of the non-commercial language and pulling that into distributing, and the broader language that just really, again, feels very broad. But definitely want to emphasize and, agree with Maddie that we do also want to support what it means to protect, interest from our farmers in the improvement of seeds.
And, the labeling requirements provisions in this section, I look at it as consumer protection. When you get a bag of red clover seed, you want to know you're getting a bag of red clover seed that contains 99% red clover seed and 1% inerts, less than a certain percentage of wheat seed. And where it came from, so you know what you're buying and what you're using is what it says it is. That's how I read that on the labeling law, and every product we buy has a label on it.
If you're buying it, Representative Nelson, I agree. I want to give an example that might help clarify the circumstance that we're thinking of that might be really burdened by this language if the definition continues to include non-commercial sharing of seed. For example, at NOFA's annual winter conference, we host a seed swap There's always a table at the conference where people can bring seeds from their home gardens to share with other people. There's no monetary exchange, and the seeds are labeled for variety, always. But the requirements for commercial seed, like you're talking about, the percentage of inerts and the things that are really relevant and super important, we understand, for farmers like yourself to have on those seed labels, I don't think should extend to things like the NOFA Winter Conference seed swap. That would be a burden that would hinder that kind of very casual seed sharing. That's really important to folks in our community who are gardening and homesteading, not commercially farming.
So I think I understand what the interest is, and we would like to find a way to accommodate that interest, but also accommodate the intellectual property right interest. From your perspective, if we were to rewrite the definition of distribute to take out barter and then the all other sort of catch-all clause, is that going to be, as Alexis, as somebody who is also in the seed development business, going to hamper intellectual property rights?
I don't feel like it would hamper intellectual property rights. And also want to echo what Maddie is saying too, of the importance in commercial seed and having proper labeling and making sure that, as it's being said, that farmers are getting the seed, good quality seed that they need is absolutely important. And so I want to also clarify from my feedback that is something I think is important and to protect. And I do agree that if we were to take out the bartering and just kind of the very broad, for lack of a better way to say it, catch-all part of the definition at the end, that it would not infringe on intellectual property rights and those protections.
Thank you very much. Greg.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, when you read the definition of distribute, if you can, because it's the word or, it's the end, not and. Distribute means to, if you want to take a couple parts of distribute, it means to produce seed for the purpose of sowing in the state through any means, if you want to. That's part of the definition. So you wouldn't even need to barter it in order to fall under, you could be producing it for your own means. And you would be a distributor according to this definition, which that is very broad. Because I don't think you're distributing seed yourself at that point. So I do
Yeah, I think
we need to take a look at
we'll have Ledge Council come up in a minute and we can get some reactions, but go ahead. You all set, Craig?
Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I read that distribute means to import, manufacture, produce, mix, blend, offer for sale, sell, barter, or supply seed. And so if we struck out barter and maybe supply, but if you're selling it, does that make sense to you folks on the big screen? If we just tweak that a little bit, I understand your swaps and whatnot, and the community that you have with those things, and that's, that is the small piece of the seed world, if you will, not to belittle it a bit, but it is a small piece of the seed world. And here in our committee, I bought a package of watermelon radish and 300 seeds in it, and I didn't barter or sell. I gave away without expecting any return everybody 30 seeds, so we could all have some watermelon
It's a
radishes.
distributor now.
Yeah, well.
I had no
yeah,
label, Richard.
Yeah, but you know, and so I understand that. That where you're coming from, and I don't want you to think I'm being a heavy on the other comments I was making. And I think we could work with some language here with Ledge Council to make that amendable to everybody.
Representative Brigham.
So being the new guy, has this been a problem?
We had testimony early on from the agency indicating that they wanted to clean things up. So I don't want to try and recollect exactly how they framed it, but this was something they asked us to do.
Yeah.
We're not going overboard, are we?
Hopefully not. But I think we have heard some legitimate concerns here. No.
One thing I can personally point to for a reason for maybe language along these lines, is I don't know if, did anybody else get a packet of seeds in the mail? Maybe a few years ago?
2 years ago, exactly, that came from who knows where, and then immediately the bulletin was put out, destroy them.
Seats were they?
I don't
Good,
even remember,
Wildflowers.
now, under the, yeah,
but it was strange
it was, yeah, it was,
and obviously an anomaly, but I wonder if part of the, I obviously the agency would have to speak to that, but
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some merit in having some laws that would protect against.
Unrequested.
Right,
So
you know, if those were noxious
Yeah.
weed seeds, right, and people just, oh, look at this, I'll put it in my garden. I could see where there's
then we'll have to go
a
get.
little bit of biosecurity, potentially there.
Do our witnesses recall anything related to that? Or want to comment?
Could you repeat that one more time, Chair?
So sometime in the past couple of years, reports of citizens receiving unsolicited in the mail seed packets and not knowing where they come from or what they were.
Hmm.
They didn't buy them. They weren't sold. No money traded hands. They were mailed. So when we're thinking about the definition of distribute, and there was some concern that the seeds might be, for some reason, a safety concern or health concern.
Nefarious.
Yeah. Yes, I can say I have heard recently a little bit, and some of the seed policy work that I'm involved in have raised questions about biosecurity. I guess to answer concisely of the thoughts that come to mind right now is I feel like what Maddie and I are proposing changes to the proposed language, and really what we're addressing the issue of non-commercial sharing. If it is helpful in my personal experiences with being a seed grower and again being with seed companies, I don't feel like this would invite any more risk as far as biosecurity goes to our state. But I also do want to recognize too that this is a very valid concern that needs to be addressed. And perhaps I wonder if there might be a possibility of, of in the future, in the not too distant future, looking at other policy mechanisms that may, protect our state from biosecurity threats with seeds. But just to reiterate, I don't feel the changes that Maddie and I are advocating for would make what we're seeing happen, open us up to new threats.
I would like to, the balance between protecting intellectual property rights and allowing people to freely grow their own seed. And yes,
Yeah.
barter share. I think that's important because I've watched documentaries myself on seed growers in the Midwest in particular who, you know, large seed companies have gone after them for the most minute things and put them out of business.
Well, and
So I
so,
think I hadn't even thought of that when we went through the bill the first time, but this is bringing up some pretty important.
Representative Nelson.
when I buy a bag corn seed or a tote of corn seed, it says right on there that I will not propagate this seed for resale purposes.
Right.
Just won't do it. It's right, it is, and if I don't agree to that, they don't sell it to me.
Right.
Okay, so we can agree that that's out there. All right, but on this, someone buys 300 watermelon radish seeds and they only want 100, they ought to be able to swap with, they want to be able to swap with their friend for 100 rhubarb, not rhubarb, but
Rutabaga.
Swiss chard seeds or whatever, and so, we stealing someone's intellectual property because I got 300 watermelon radish seeds. Just, you're not talking swapping trailer loads of seeds. I mean, we could put, small quantities, to protect that, to protect the commercial interest, because they do deserve protected. But things like they do, I don't think are nefarious. I don't think they do it in bad faith to the companies that are doing it.
Let's take another question. If there's no other discussion, we could have Ledge Council come up and get some input there too. John?
I just wondered about whether this would catch up also inadvertent distribution of seeds, say like I sell Richard hay or I sell my brother-in-law excavator mulch hay. And there's seeds and things like that, so would labeling be required for that sort of inadvertent distribution of seed?
Can I react to that? I mean,
Yes,
I think that could be really easily solved by including the word intentionally in the definition of distribute. I don't see that as what this language is aimed at, but I think if you wanted to prevent it expanding to apply to that, you could include the word intentionally. I also just want to say I appreciate Representative Burt's point about this being or language, and I actually had not been interpreting it that way. So I would appreciate that maybe you all will bring that to Ledge Council to get clarified too, because I think, if producing seed in and of itself for non-commercial purposes also brings you under the definition of a distributor, that would be concern to us too.
So possibly striking the word produce from line 15 there in the definition of distribute, strike produce.
I think produce could stay in as long as it was tied to commercial sale. I think that all of those import, manufacture, produce, mix, blend makes sense as long as they are clearly tied to commercial operations.
Right, yes, if it's all of those things are leading up to selling it to somebody. But if you're producing your own seed to sow yourself, which in this current definition would follow a distributor, if I'm reading it right, obviously. This is the Ledge Council on that one, but it looks to me because of the word or.
You worried about
clarification that you can produce and sow your own seed on your own farm.
So let's have Bradley come up, who's been listening.
I do have one more question actually.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Bradley, you can come up while we're.
Alexis, I'm just curious if there's any other things, you said you sell seed, is that correct?
So to clarify, I have worked as a manager for two different seed companies. So as far as my own seed growing right now, to clarify, I don't currently sell seed from my seed growing activities I'm doing right now in Vermont, but I do have a relationship with being familiar with the commercial landscape through my prior work experiences being with two seed companies.
And so from your experience with those seed companies, since they are companies that are in the business of selling seed, does the language look good otherwise in the bill to you? For just someone who's set up to actually sell and distribute seed for sale? Is there anything that pops up in that case, or does it look pretty straightforward to you?
Thank you for asking. From what I have reviewed in the policy changes, I think if we are, if the committee is open as we're discussing again to make sure that we're staying really specific about the language pertaining to commercial seed activities, and again, not non-commercial seed activities. Nothing comes to mind as additional concerns at this moment.
All right, thank you. You're welcome to stay on while we chat with our legislative counsel. And Bradley, I wonder whether, having listened to the conversation, you have any thoughts, whether this seems straightforward or any concerns that what we've been discussing might not be as straightforward as we'd like it to be.
Yeah, Bradley Shulman, Office of Legislative Counsel. So first, to Representative O'Brien's point, usually when you are enforcing a law, it requires some knowledge of the activity that you're doing. And so usually inadvertent inclusion of seed, if you're selling something else and there's like some seeds there and it's just not your intent, you would not fall under the statute. So this isn't necessarily like a strict liability statute, right? So a strict liability statute would be no matter what, and whatever it is that you're doing, if you sell a seed and there's like one seed like on your little cup that you sell, you might be in trouble. And that's not this statute. So I say the word likely because sometimes people, and if it ever became an issue, sometimes judges can make interesting decisions. But in a situation where someone is selling product X that's not seed, like hay, and there's some seeds there, they probably have not triggered the labeling requirement without any additional language or anything in the statute. So that would be my take on that piece. The committee brings up a lot of interesting points. I'll just share my screen and bring up the language just so we can look at it. And to give a preview of what I'm thinking while I do this is adding a definition of non-commercial seed might be the best way to go. We can talk about it. Okay. And there it is.
Just wonder, where did this language come from? Was it the agency provided it to us, or did they put their heads together with ASTA, for example, for this?
Well, I don't know. The agency gave us this language, maybe word for word, Bradley. I don't know if we had any, if you took it and massaged it all, but before that, I don't know whether it came where it came from.
Right, and I mean, it seems like almost like a boilerplate thing that was borrowed from somewhere.
Yeah.
So that is a good question. I mean, this language came from the agency, and I don't recall touching it. So I none of my handiwork is in there. And I have the national standards up. I'm just kind of doing a quick control find for the definition of distribute, and I actually don't see it in theirs, but they might use some other term. So, so my hunch is that this is from the agency based on kind of their analysis. If I find it later in the national standards, which we will go to when we look at non-commercial seeds, I'll let you folks know. So the committee raised a couple of interesting and good points. The committee and the witnesses raised some interesting good points here. Because I don't think taking out the word barter or supply would necessarily get at what would necessarily kind of reach the goal. So based on what I'm hearing, I think the goal is to allow individuals to share seeds with no expectation of anything in return, right? And so someone could give someone seeds for one thing, and you're not even expecting something back, right? So barter, I mean, I guess technically bartering means you expect something back. So you're bartering for some other seeds. If I give you my corn seeds, you'll give me your watermelon seeds. So that is bartering. And so giving someone seeds, though, might itself fall under the definition of distribute here. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the intent.
So the way that Representative Nelson just gave us seeds as a gift.
Potentially, because the word supply is oftentimes has a financial context, but doesn't necessarily have a financial context. That's not 100% certain. And so I think narrowing to have a definition of whether it's a definition of non-commercial seeds or gifting or something of that sort. Representative Burt also made an interesting point too. Can you produce your own seeds for your own farm? And that is an interesting question because it raises a couple more issues. One, if we're envisioning just someone who doesn't have a farm and they just are planting things out in their backyard, and then they have their own seeds, and then they kind of grow and grow and grow, but they're not farming, right? It's just kind of a hobbyist thing. That might be one thing. But if you have a large scale farm that is in the business of producing seeds, but is also a farmer, is that a different scenario, right? And so someone's in the business of producing seeds, and can they take their own seeds and essentially give it or sell it to themselves as the farmer? And do we want to capture that in this labeling requirement? So there's a touch of a distinction there. And obviously that's a policy decision of what the committee would want to envision in that scenario. Suffice to say, at minimum, I do recommend some kind of definition of non-commercial seeds and have that be an exception from distribute.
And then together, those things would address what you think you've heard.
I think so. Because the other issue I heard was, and this bill does use the word non-commercial.
Right, and that's not defined, I think.
And yes, and that
was
correct.
the point that I think that the trade association was bringing up, that it wasn't a definition.
Right. And so, and that's 100% correct. And so
Page 21.
yes, it is page 21, line 4. And so this is an exemption. I'm scrolling up now. So on page 19. Page 19, section 648 is registration and reporting. And then so no person shall distribute seed without registering annually. And then is subsection A, subsection B, the following shall be except for registration requirements: seed not intended for sowing purposes, seed in storage or consigned to a seed cleaning or processing establishment, seeds grown, sold, and delivered by a producer and on the producer's own premises. Oh, okay. For seeding purposes, they wouldn't necessarily have to register. to the ultimate consumer providing such seeds has neither been advertised for sale nor been delivered by a commercial carrier, and provided the seed contains no prohibited noxious weed seeds, and is not more than 2,000 seeds. And so this is the addition here that we're discussing today: interpersonal sharing of seed for home, educational, charitable, or personal non-commercial use. So they'd be already exempt from the registration requirement. And it sounds like adding an exemption from the labeling requirement might also be something the committee is interested in doing. And so that could be done with a similar exemption from the labeling requirement, and then also adding a definition of non-commercial seeds to the definition section of the bill.
All right, well, why don't we then charge you, Bradley, when you have an opportunity in the near future
Yes.
to bring us back some proposed changes there. Yeah, John.
I just wonder, was seed defined in this too?
Yes. Seed. Different kinds of seeds are defined in the.
I wondered, like seed potatoes, do they fall into this?
Excuse me.
Potatoes?
Seed potatoes.
Starter potatoes.
I see.
Not really seeds, but.
I would have to kind of examine the definitions of seeds, because we have agricultural seed, flower seed, weed seed, noxious weed seeds, and then there's some other definitions that are currently in statute. So I'd have to, my hunch is, I would have to just dig into that piece a little bit more, just to make sure, because there are just different categories of things here.
Right, and some seeds like black sunflower seed or corn for, cattle are seeds, right? But
They're
they're
not intended for sowing, so it's not in
not
this
sowing
definition.
is important.
Yeah. Not in this definition.
And one thing I did want to show the committee, and it's going to require me to stop sharing and then reshare, because I just wanted to show the definition of non-commercial. Let me just share my screen for a minute. And so this is these are the Association of American Seeds recommended uniform state seed law. So it's what, and so the non-commercial seed sharing was shared with the committee by a different witness earlier. That's the same definition here. I don't know if that person mentioned it, but the definition of non-commercial seed is what you saw earlier. It means no monetary consideration or compensation may be transferred in return for receiving seeds. Additionally, anyone distributing seeds under these rules, the rules of this definition may not expect or create the expectation that seeds must be returned in exchange for receiving seeds, right? And so just giving them without the expectation that you're going to get something in return, that's different. And if distribution of seeds is found to be in anticipation of connection to money paid for work or services rendered by the same person distributing seeds, such distribution shall not be considered non-commercial within these rules.
So I just wanted to check. So the seed swap that Maddie talked about at the NOFA conference, that would be, the table's full of seeds, and you might put seeds in, or you might just pick some up, but you might get some in exchange for yours. So it's not that you can't get something, you just can't require it if you're doing it under that informal methodology.
I think that's right. That's right. Because usually when you're bartering, if like a contract can be oral, right? You can have an oral contract. I'll give you X, you give me Y. And those seed conferences, as far as I understand them, that's not the case. You go there and you might strike gold and say, hey, this is what I want. I've been wanting this forever. And then you might go there and you're like, well, this is this is good. Yeah. Okay. So you'll find something. But there is no, the legal term is consideration, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's no tit for tat.
Yeah.
And you could walk away with nothing, or you could walk away with a big bag. And that's just kind of luck of the draw. And I think that would not be covered.
So,
Hang on a second. I just went before we leave this, and then John had a question too. The language on page 16, Bradley, and you don't need to pull it up unless you've got it. handy again there, but so this is where the farm seed law is referred to. And the sort of a related concern that I think our producers just shared was the broad ability here that we would be giving the secretary to apply any other term or definition. And striking that, I think, was one suggestion that they had. And I don't know whether the committee supports that or not, but I just want to flag that too, before we lose sight of that. But John.
Just wondering a scenario of where you're sharing an order. So let's say Richard buys a bag of seed when he needs half a bag of seed and I need half a bag of seed. He pays $100 for it. He takes his half bag and sells me the other half for 50. We both, is that bartering or is that non-commercial sharing?
Or something else.
I think that's commercial sharing, right?
But it's not a commercial transaction, and he's got a bag and he's just selling me what's left, and that we've agreed ahead of time, he only needs half a bag, he's gonna make the order.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting question, because you could see that two ways. One is you could see it as Representative Nelson making the purchase and then you Venmoing him he did $100 purchase and you Venmoing him half, and then he gives you half. And the purchase is actually from a third party. And the arrangement that the two of you have isn't necessarily its own sale. Yeah, you could, you're essentially splitting the cost of one sale, right? As opposed to Representative Nelson buys seed and then turns around and sells it to you. I think if we had a scenario where the agreement isn't necessarily to split the cost outright, and I buy $1,000 worth of seed and I only need $100 worth of seed, so I have $900 worth of seed left over, and I'm selling it, I might be responsible for ensuring that those seeds are labeled. And I might also have to register because I'm now potentially a commercial seller.
And if it were a seed that had intellectual property rights, you might not be able to do that at all.
Yeah, I might not be able to do that at all. So I would have to also follow a whole bunch of other laws, to make sure that I am selling something lawfully.
This happens, actually, it happened in our community, not with seed, but with onion starts. One guy had a whole big order and people from all over town go to him and they pay for their little, share of that pile of onion starts. He's not a distributor, he's just had an order, but it happens.
Yeah, I'm working cooperatively. Representative Nelson.
Can you go back to the definition of non-commercial?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so non-commercial seeds sharing. No money, consideration, or compensation may be transferred in return for receiving seeds. So you're under if we put this definition in, that what they do at the NOFA thing would be allowed.
I would say yes.
Okay, and I agree with you. And then this keeps me from getting arrested from giving away watermelon seeds.
I don't think it's the rest.
But
Yeah.
that's the fun, that's the ha-ha part, sarcastic part of me, but it would allow people to have weddings that give away the wildflower packet seeds, sow these wildflowers in honor of our nuptials, and you'll be reminded of them every June when they bloom and whatnot. So food is good and they get a bunch of seeds and they give them away to people so they can have a small container garden at their house. I think we should include this language because it could cover what NOFA does.
So I think
along with a few other
we
changes.
may want to, we may want to hear from NOFA because I think that this is the language that had been suggested by the Seed Association, and NOFA was concerned about the language. So we, rather than find ourselves tomorrow back here dealing with it, maybe we can try and work that out before we put the language in. And I'm not able to say what it is that the concern was specifically here. Representative Bosler.
Yeah, I know there was a situation some years ago in India where there were genetically modified sort of superfoods that the farmers would get these seeds and they were really productive, but they weren't allowed to save the seed because it was considered, I think, a violation of copyright or whatever, the intellectual property rights. And it was really problematic because historically that was how people got their seed, was they saved their seed, and they were told, no, you can't save seed. And so I just want to make sure if we're making any changes that we're not making it so that we can't save and share our own seeds, because to me, seeds are a thing from nature. And it's one thing if somebody's making some genetically modified thing and they don't want you to resell that one. But there are lots of seeds that just come from the things that we plant. And if I take a bunch of, seeds out of my butternut squash and I have a bunch of them that are dry and I'm like, wow, I had a great crop of butternut squash this year, I'm going to use my own seeds. Like, I just don't want us to be doing something that's going to make it harder for people to grow their food, because that's what we're supposed to be supporting on this committee.
So as long as that transaction is non-commercial, I don't see additional requirements in this bill, non-commercial, and we make the changes, right, that we're talking about. I don't see this bill requiring some additional work or on behalf of the person who's growing a butternut squash
And sharing the
that.
seeds with their friends.
Yeah.
It's a good crop.
So, but the caveat is if there is some intellectual property right in the seed, there might be an intellectual property interest that would prevent someone from reselling the seed or distributing it in some way. That might be an intellectual property right above and beyond what we're talking about in this bill here. And I'm not familiar with the nuts and bolts of how that might work, but I can imagine someone with a patent on something that if you reproduce that thing through a natural process, them starting that process by sending you a cease and desist letter saying, stop sharing all of these seeds. They're my seeds. And having that play out. I think that that's a possibility both under current law and if this passes. I don't think this does anything to change that, other than requiring labeling, which is kind of a consumer protection piece to, in addition to protecting intellectual property, because it tells you what's in it. And if you're selling the seed, you're required to disclose what's in the thing. And so I think that is, at least in part, the intellectual property protection. But whether someone can say, those are actually my seeds, and whether you grew them yourself based on the product that you got, you can't sell that. And I think potentially someone could have a problem with that.
So, yeah, so I don't know that we can write statute that violates or that somehow interferes with IP rights. So we'll make sure we don't do that. Or do our best to avoid doing that, while at the same time not granting any more rights to a seed company than we want them to have. I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I wonder whether we can address the concerns that were heard without including a definition, if that's possible. If it's not, then we'll need to come back and figure out what that definition needs to be.
Okay.
But I think that's the definition that's here was problematic from their standpoint.
Okay.
So Bradley, the exemptions that are listed in page 20. Remember where that is?
20, yep, page 20, the B is where the exemptions are start for, and this would be exemptions from registering annually.
Registering. But it doesn't, this isn't exemptions for labeling.
That's correct. That's correct. So,
So even like technically the watermelon radish seeds that Rep Nelson gave us, we should have been labeled.
essentially, according to this,
I
essentially.
like those bags.
Good.
Said watermelon radishes.
You might want to look and see if you have to put, you know, the
Lot number.
lot number and whatnot.
QR code.
So really it only has to do with registration. Is there a way to just include exemptions for the labeling as well?
Yeah, and I think that's what we were discussing. Yeah, but I think that would require a definition of non-commercial seeds. And so I think if the definition from Russell is problematic, I think the committee should potentially try and perhaps take testimony on language that would not be problematic, or identify what is problematic with that language. Because I think just striking the word barter or supply does not as cleanly get at the issue. I think barter is essentially a commercial transaction of a different kind. I think that would be more in the kind of more traditional contract realm. So what Representative Nelson did with the watermelon seeds is not necessarily bartering, it's a gift. But I think that could apply under supply, the word supply. If you take the word supply out, does that have unintended consequences on the commercial side? Potentially, maybe not. There's a question mark over that. So if we took out the word supply, I think you could get away with gifting under the statute. But I would really have to chew on whether something could get through on the commercial side. Exactly. So my recommendation would be finding a definition of non-commercial seed, putting that in a definition section that also defines it for the registration exemption, and then adding an exemption for the labeling requirement, I think would be the good way to keep the committee's goals here.
The non-commercial definition though says no money, so that doesn't help me when I buy my half bag of seed. So that's where the barter word has to come out, because
John, the point that Vice Council was making, that you're cost sharing on the seed, you're not actually buying them. I guess you would be paying him for the seed, so.
No,
Yeah,
you're cost sharing. You're, I don't see how cost sharing would be a problem. We're looking at a lot of problems, and, we don't have a lot of seed cops in the state.
I know. Well, we don't want to make it any more work for the agency. I mean, they didn't, on the municipal bylaw, they didn't want to have to go out to everybody's backyard, right?
Count chickens.
Yeah, they don't want to count seeds either.
Yeah, and,
But I do think in the case of something like a seed packet coming in the mail from an unknown source, there might want to be some sort of language about, if the secretary deems it to be a biosecurity. I don't know.
Well, so
Because that could-
that's
We don't want to make.
well, it says right here that, it talks about noxious weed seeds and, prohibited and then, if you're growing your own seed for yourself, right, on page 20, line 15, down near the bottom, you provide, provided the seed contains no prohibited noxious weed seeds or not more than one restricted noxious weed seed per 2,000 seeds, and, when you buy seed, it'll say, you'll have an exemption for that 0.02% of seed that may not be what you want. No, it's not like cleaning off the top of the rotary mower the end of June when the Timothy's all headed out and you got all that seed there, which people have been known to take, scatter in the bald spots in their field.
Yeah.
For themselves.
Well, it sounds like legislative council has some ideas about language and wait for the profound
Well,
version.
I mean, to that end, I do think that the committee would benefit from sussing out a definition of non-commercial. Whether that requires taking more testimony or sussing it out here. I do think a non-commercial seed definition is probably the best way to siphon off what the committee is considering right now, while also making sure that commercial activity is subject to labeling and registration requirements. Before we forget, Representative Durfee, to your point earlier about the rulemaking piece, which I don't remember where that was now. Oh, so what's on the screen now? The subsection B, giving the secretary authority to adopt rules and definitions from the American Association of American Seed Control officials. Russell? I mean, this potentially, I mean, if the secretary did rulemaking, the secretary could adopt the definition of non-commercial seeds, because that's in Russell. And so I think the committee doesn't necessarily have to decide now, but I would prefer some instruction about whether or not to take this piece out.
Yeah, okay. All right. Good. I thought when I stepped out, everyone would have solved this. Got back in. Okay. All right. And I'm not sure whether NOFA stayed on or not and was able to hear this, sort of the latter part of this conversation, but I'll check with them. They were off. Okay. I'll check with them. Good. Thank you, everybody. I think it was a good discussion, and see if we can come up with something that is more or less amenable to everybody. Just wanted to, it didn't and expected we need to go as long on this part of the conversation. I think our afternoon floor may be not terribly long, so let's check in at where we are, and if people can come back in the committee, we can continue. I don't know if you're available either, Bradley.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything on my calendar for this afternoon.
Okay.
So, if Patricia can just ping me.
I'm thinking sort of about the arc of the rest of the session, and
Please.
I hadn't been thinking so much about that. I knew that at some point we were going to be leaving Montpelier, and possibly because last year we stayed so late into May, end of May, and then came back, that we might end up in the same situation because of the education bill still being an issue. But I've been hearing now that maybe there's some positive movement, and we might not be here until summer. And I don't want to be caught flat-footed on, particularly in the municipal regulation piece. The Senate did pass, or the Senate Ag Committee did pass with an amendment, our 941 yesterday. It's a major amendment. It's a strike-all amendment. And it's similar to what the agency presented to us last week. That bill will go onto the Senate floor sometime, and then if it takes 3 days, if it does take 3 days, it'll be middle of next week before we get it back. They might expedite it, but short of that, we could still, I think, move ahead and take some testimony using this bill, since we still have sections 1 through 3 there. So Bradley, I wonder whether we could have you show us kind of a side-by-side of what we passed and what now the Senate has amended it. And I think kind of high level, doesn't need necessarily be sort of line by line, but whatever is convenient for you. Just so we can see, you know, what's there, what's different, what do we like about it, what would we like to change? So that, maybe we can do that this afternoon if there's time,
Okay.
and if not, we can find something else.
Don't we really have three versions at this point? The one that's in the Senate bill,
Yes,
and the one we passed, and then their amendment.
yeah, and I'm thinking, when I say side by side, not including the one that's in sections 1 through 3.
Okay.
I don't think that anybody's planning to move ahead with that. But we can have it, we can certainly, if somebody wants to, we can do that.
Just making sure that.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Whole piece here.
yeah. All right, Bradley, any concerns about that or?
No, I should be able to get that by the time you folks get back.
Okay, all right, well, let's see, it may be that it's too late in the afternoon by the time we're done there, but
Keep me posted, I'll be here.
it may also only be an hour plus, so. Just checking in on other bills, I happened to ask about the baby food bill, and apparently that was voted out of committee this morning.
Paraquat too.
Paraquat definitely was yesterday, yep. Our municipal at 942, sorry, the miscellaneous 942, Greg's.
They have some amendments that I'm in tomorrow morning on.
Okay, so that's still going.
How about right to garden?
I'm not familiar. That one's not
That
on.
was a
Get
different-
into like housing in general or something.
Maybe you can check on that.
Yeah.
See where that is, Michelle. Yeah. Because it'd be good to get
Yeah.
that out.
What's the number again?
37, was it page 37?
Yeah, 537, H
537, there we go, yeah.
And then the wood products manufacturers bill is in Senate natural, and there's a small amendment there, I think. Okay. Anybody have anything else right now?
Sometime we gotta talk about the stakeholder, Capral stakeholder.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We're gonna, we will just add that language in, I think, at this point.
Yeah,
If the commissioner, I don't think is able to testify on it, so.
and, you know, we have some questions, you know, or maybe some one of the stakeholder group has some thoughts on the appropriation.
Oh, okay,
We can discuss it
okay.
sometime.
So that language that the stakeholder group proposed, maybe we could look at that quickly this afternoon too, Bradley.
For the cable group.
Yeah, the amendment,
Okay, I think Mike is working on that.
was that Mike?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Cool. Okay, I'll check with him.
Okay, thank you.
And if not today, tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
So coming back after the floor? No.
yeah, if it's not terribly late in the afternoon, yeah.
Model training.
And I don't
Put in
think,
your rights. Yeah.
Not that bad.
okay, good. Well, let's break then and we'll